Today we have brought bone-chilling real-life stories that people shared on Reddit of horrors they experienced in their lives. The entity making itself seen or heard in the house, to everyone, to entity attacking their personal and mental well-being. Listen to the real stories that people shared of them with us. I've had 3 very definitive and terrifying attacks: a demon in California, some kind of skinwalker in Oregon, and a witch in Utah. The skinwalker one was the most threatening and violent, so I'll just quickly tell that one. In 2012, my buddy and I were driving from LA to Portland and were tired of this long scenic road we took, and decided to take a shortcut across some mountains to get back to the major freeway toward the west. We looked on the map and found a route that would take about 5 hours. The sun set late those days, so it had just started to go down as we turned onto this 2-lane road heading into the forest. About an hour of driving and everything seemed normal, but there was an overall unease because we hadn't come across a single other car. As we drove on, the moon hadn't come up yet, so it was just pitch black forests on either side and both of our phones couldn't get service. We came around a corner and a huge buck stood right in middle of the road. We were going around 65 miles per hour and panicked and had to swerve around it, and it didn't budge at all. So we're a little shaken up and realizing we're deep in the middle of a spooky-ass forest that we don't want to get stuck in, so we slow down a little. A couple minutes later another deer comes jumping right at the car, and then another just down the road. We're just dodging deer on a pitch-black winding road at this point, and just getting tunnel vision from trying to focus. Eventually the moon comes up and we can see a little further down the road, and we get a little sense of relief. Through the trees we see nice moonlit ripples on some kind of lake, and it feels like we're on the right track. As we drive along the lake, there's a light set up and woman slumped in a folding chair next to a sign that says road closed. Just in the middle of the damn road. I slowly drive towards her and lean out the window and yell, "Is the road actually closed?" "There's no signs the whole way here," she just says. "Road's shut down till 6 a.m. Turn around or just sleep here if you want." And she just keeps sitting. No cars around or a little shelter for her to sleep in, just sitting in a chair. So at this point we're completely exhausted and think it's already so late. Let's just pull over a little ways back away from the methed-out chairwoman. We pull up next to the lake and start to settle in to try to sleep. It's chokingly silent in the car and we're both pretending to sleep, when all of a sudden right in between us inside my car, we hear a little girl scream. Like murder scream. I immediately turn on my car and start driving as fast as I can, and my friend starts trying to say, "I'm sorry whatever happened to you, we don't have anything to do with that," and having a panic attack. As he's closing his eyes and praying, out of the corner of my eye something big and white comes silently rushing down out from the forest towards my car. I'm completely terrified, trying to keep the car straight and my eyes on the road. I'm going maybe 60 with my foot fully on the accelerator, and this tall thin white thing is staying right next to my window maybe 3 feet away for like 4 seconds. I know that if I look at it directly I'm going to just die, complete and utter terror. I round the bend and it peels off back into the forest. Lightning starts to light up above us, and it starts to drizzle, and then we see something on the road, a fucking carcass of one of the deer, just absolutely decimated. Then further down another, completely ripped in half and steam rising out of its ribcage, like it was still warm. At this point I think we've both gone hysterical. It starts pouring down rain, there's lightning and thunder, and it feels like the forest is just going to eat us. Finally in the distance we can see the intersection where we first came from. We race to it like it's the finish line, and I kid you not, as soon as we get to the stop sign, the rain stops, the lightning stops. We look at each other and just laugh. Then, not done yet, my phone rings. At this point it's like 3 a.m. or so, and it's my mom. I pick up, about to tell her what happened, and angrily she says, "Who the fuck was that? Who the fuck was the woman screaming at me? Your phone calls me in the middle of the night, and some horrible bitch is just screaming at me? I call back and your phone's off and you don't pick up till now." We pulled into the nearest hotel and I slept with a stupid little crossbow in my hand. I only heard about skinwalkers and things like them in the last couple years, people painted white, running alongside cars. I think about it all the goddamn time. It was summer of 2002 when the following took place. Since I was born, I was always subject to odd things happening in our household, but it wasn't until our family moved into a well-known apartment complex in Seymour where my life would be turned upside down. I would end up seeing something that would scar me and haunt my thoughts to this very day. Whatever it was in that apartment, it was evil and obsessed with torturing me out of everyone in my family. Its presence grew stronger and stronger as time passed. I would explain to my parents and sister what I would see or hear, and it just seemed like nobody would ever believe me until odd things started happening to them. One time I woke up around 4 a.m. and the moon was so bright you can see the bluish hue light up the room that me and my sister shared at the time. I woke up to the sound of my parents' doorknob shaking violently down the hallway. My first instinct was to ask, "Everything okay, Dad?" There was no reply back and the doorknob stopped shaking to my parents' bedroom. I instantly knew there was someone in our home. I leaned over and looked in the hallway from my bed and saw this 6 to 7 foot shadow standing in the middle of the hallway. No one in my family is over 5 feet 7 inches. Panic and fear set in, thinking we were getting robbed, and all I could think of is, this is how I die. I slowly moved back into my bed under the covers and whispered my sister's name, trying to wake her up. My sister asked across the room loudly, "What's up?" "I'm sleeping," I whispered back. "Sure, there is someone in the hallway." Silence. My sister had fallen back to sleep. I peeked back towards the hallway to see this thing hiding alongside the wall, as if trying not to be seen. I can see its chest moving up and down as if it were breathing heavily. Another thing I noticed was how oddly long its fingers were. I have never felt such fear in my body than in that moment, as I feared for the life of my family at this point. I had no idea what I was looking at. I woke my sister back up because, of course, when you get scared, the instant feeling of having to use the bathroom kicks in. My sister, groggy and half asleep, follows me to wait outside the bathroom since I was paralyzed in fear. As I was washing my hands, I could hear my sister walking back to the room. I quickly dried my hands, shut the lights off, and started speed walking down the hallway back to the room. I instantly hear running footsteps growing louder and faster behind me. I ran, shut the door, locked it, and jumped into bed. My sister asked me if I was alright, cause she can see how nervous I was. We shrugged all this off as possibly being half asleep and started to close our eyes. That's when we both woke up to the sound of the door violent shaking, as if whatever was behind it wanted to get in and would stop at nothing. The door suddenly stopped shaking. Silence filled the room. I asked my sister, "Did you hear that?" She replied back in a nervous tone, "Yeah." I made a dash for it, and pounded the wall with my fists as hard as I possibly could, yelling for help. I could hear my dad get out of bed frantically and run to our bedroom door, knocking and asking if everything was all right. We explained to my dad what had happened, and he checked everywhere and found no one in the apartment. Every window and door was locked from the inside. Till this day, the image of what I saw still haunts me. That place was evil. It changed our family for the worst, and the feeling of dread and depression filled the walls of that apartment like never before. I really don't know what I saw that day, but I'm glad that never happened to me or my family again. Men with schizophrenia had severe audible hallucinations, but I could hear them too. Years ago, I was in a rehab for drug addiction. I did 5 months in rehab, then 6 months of sober living following that. This occurred the last few weeks of being in rehab before going to sober living. I met hundreds of addicts. New people would come and go on a daily basis. A lot of these people were much worse off than others, and everyone was in for different things. A lot of these people that came in also had a plethora of mental illnesses. Severe depression, PTSD, bipolar disorder, and many others. I'll never forget the day Mike, 30 to 40 M, was admitted. A lot of the techs that worked at the rehab informed all of the patients about Mike and his condition. He had a case of severe schizophrenia and would constantly be talking to no one. He would get really agitated and upset at times at these voices and would often yell and have a panic attack. It was very sad, to be honest. It wasn't like this would happen sometimes. This was an ongoing 24/7 problem that Mike dealt with. The rehab was situated in an old motel-like complex, except it was much, much nicer, like a fancy hotel. Girls across the street in identical buildings. Everyone was assigned to a specific room with 2 to 3 other patients. When Mike showed up, he was placed in the unit I was in. I introduced myself to him and shook his hand. He seemed so timid and nervous, but I gave a rundown of how things work and a rough daily schedule for our program. I showed him his room and told him to not hesitate to ask me for anything. Before I walked away, I told him, "Mike, we are all in here for our own reasons. I just want you to know that there is no judgment whatsoever on my end, and that no matter what you may be dealing with, you can come to me and confide in me for anything." He partially grinned and nodded at me. That was the last time we spoke for the 2 weeks he was there. That evening, I was watching TV in the living room of our unit when I heard him start aggressively talking to himself. The strange thing is that it literally sounded like he was having a legit conversation. I heard him say, "Don't say that, shut the fuck up." And then 5 seconds later he said, "I'm not going to do that, leave me the fuck alone." And then a few seconds later, "Get the fuck out of here." This was expected because I was informed of his condition, but hearing him have an episode the first time made me feel bad, really bad for him. Things took a very odd turn over the following days. A few days after Mike was placed in my unit, I woke up one morning to go make some coffee. I was in the kitchen, and Mike's room was down the hallway. I was pulling out a coffee filter when I heard clear as day, "What are you doing?" I turned around expecting to see Mike, but no one was there. Then I hear Mike all the way from his room scream, "ARRGGGCHHH! Get the fuck out of here!" I was very, very confused and didn't know what to make of it, and kind of just shrugged it off. I was pretty alarmed by this. But things kept happening. It was later week I was in the living room watching TV again when I heard Mike having another conversation with himself. But this time I could distinctly hear a second voice. I thought to myself, does he have a split personality, and is having a conversation between himself and his other self? The other voice was so much different, and I kept telling myself Mike's just really, really good at imitating other voices. I turned the volume down on the TV so I could hear more of this conversation. Mike says, "I told you no, I'm not going to do that. Leave me alone, please." The other voice responds, "Just go and do what I tell you, it's for the best." Mike responds, "No, that's bad. I won't do it." The other voice responds, "Go to the kitchen and get the knife now." Then Mike let out a big scream of despair. I sat there on that couch in utter disbelief. My brain could not comprehend what I was hearing or what was happening. I got a huge sense of dread that came over me. I got up and started making my way to his door to check on him. As I got closer, the conversation was becoming much more audible and clear to hear. There was 2 fucking people in that room, and nothing is ever going to change my mind. As I heard the other voice trying to persuade Mike again, I knocked on his door and the voice stopped immediately. I opened the door to tell Mike I heard him scream and wanted to see if he's okay. It was just him sitting in a chair with his head in his hands like he just got some really bad news. He looked up at me and said, "I'm fine, thanks. Please shut the door." I immediately went to our head nurse and explained to her that Mike was saying some pretty scary things and that I was in fear of my life being in the same room as him. I mentioned to her hearing him talk to himself about a knife, and that was all it took for them to take Mike and relocate to somewhere else where he could get help. To this day, I think about this experience I had with Mike and try to find reasonable explanations for what happened and what I heard. I've never heard voices or had hallucinations. I've been clean off drugs for years. This was just an experience I had that has made me question reality. I feel like he didn't have schizophrenia, but was possessed. I think about it often and still can't come to terms with it. I guess I want closure about it, and it's just something I'll never get. My aunt refused to babysit me ever again. This story happened to me when I was in middle school, and I will never forget it. I thought this was the perfect community to share my experience. For some backstory. This took place around the time I was 11 to 13 years old in my mom's boyfriend's townhome. I am now 25. Both my mother and I had experienced many unnerving moments in that house. We are both sensitive, while her boyfriend was skeptical. Some of my own experiences there include books falling from my bookshelf, never being able to sleep with the light off due to the overwhelming sense of fear, hangers being flung from the closet, and some of the worst episodes of sleep paralysis I have ever had even to this day. One night, which I will never forget, led me to sleep in my mother's bed for the first time in years. I had an episode of sleep paralysis, where two pairs of eyes flashed in front of me, while my own were closed, and something crawled up from under my bed, laid on my side, and breathed in my ear. I could not move, open my eyes, and nothing came out when I tried to scream. I will never forget that night, and I have not experienced a worse episode since. I was into drawing, and one day I drew a demon girl, which I had never done before or drew since. Very out of character for me. I hung it up outside of my bedroom door, and my mom removed it from the home and burned it because she was so horrified of what she had experienced there. Alright, on to the story. One night during the week, my mom and her then boyfriend were going to be out of town. I had school the next day, so my mom had asked her sister, J, and her boyfriend, now husband, M, to babysit me and make sure I got to school all right. The night itself was relatively normal, and we soon all went to bed. Luckily, I slept through the whole thing, but my aunt and mom relayed to me what happened next. My aunt, J, said that her and M were laying awake in my mom's bed for the night on the second floor. They were just about to fall asleep when they were absolutely horrified by what they described to be the clearest, loudest woman's scream they have ever heard coming from the bottom of the stairs. They were so freaked and were frozen for a few moments while they looked at each other to confirm what they had just heard. J got up to check on me across the hall and said that I was sound asleep, with the light on of course, and when she looked over the second floor landing she, of course, saw absolutely no one there. The next afternoon when my mom and her boyfriend returned home, my mom asked, J, "So, how did it go? Did you hear anything?" My aunt was absolutely terrified and was not happy that my mom knew that something was going on, and still asked her to watch me. To this day, my aunt and M will assert that they know what they heard and they refuse to ever babysit me or spend the night again. Luckily, we only lived in that house for 3 to 4 years. Once my mom and I moved out, we still had some unexplainable experiences, but never to that same degree. There was definitely something in that townhome. My experience with demons and astral projection. I want to share a real experience that I had about 7 years ago. This might not be as interesting as it could be, because it's real. I'm not trying to make things up for the sake of entertainment. I just want to get this off my chest, as it was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. Around the age of 19, I was disqualified from the military due to a medical disqualification. I wasn't too sure what to do with my life since this was a lifelong dream. I felt very lost. I did a lot of soul searching during this time, studied many religions and philosophies. At some point I got into occultism, law of attraction, meditation, and finally, astral projection. To keep it short, I started meditating to attract into my life the things I wanted, and I also started to practice astral projection. After a few weeks, my aunt started to come into my room, scared, and began to question what I was doing. I told her I was meditating quite frequently, sometimes up to 3 a day. Why was she asking? She told me that something very weird had just happened in the house. In fact, for a few days now, several weird things had been happening. She told me while they were watching TV, the front door of the house unlocked itself, and the door had just been slammed open. They told me things had been falling off counters, and my uncle was seeing things from the corner of his eyes. She didn't ask me to stop, she actually seemed intrigued. My aunt is into crystals and all kinds of groovy-do stuff. I kept this going. I wasn't able to astral project yet, but I was able to get parts of my body to leave, as weird as that sounds. I was able to remove my arm from my arm. It's a very odd feeling to describe. It feels like your arms is paralyzed, yet another one you can fully manipulate and feel is coming out of it. I was also able to do this with my right leg. For those who are not understanding what astral projection is, it means leaving your body. I'm not sure if your soul leaves your body or if you project it mentally. All I know is it's very real. I'm not here to persuade you one way or the other, but it's thing. Supposedly you are able to soul travel by doing this. In any case, a couple weeks go by and my uncle and aunt need to be gone for a couple days, and I have the house for myself. So what do? Have a girl over like any normal dude would? No, I meditate and try to leave my body. By this point I'm obsessed. For the first time I fall asleep while meditating, and what proceeds to happen is one of the most traumatic and terrifying things to ever happen to me. Who am I kidding? It's by far the most terrifying experience of my life, and it haunts me to this day. This is the part of the story I don't like telling anyone, because they dismiss it as a nightmare or, "It's just sleep paralysis, bro." I don't care what you decide to call what I'm about to tell you. If you want to label it as fake, it was more real than life to me. I have astral projected a few times. I never saw anything very interesting other than my own home, freaking out my dogs, and mostly what I do is fly over lakes, factories at night, the city. I can never do it for very long. I have not mastered it, and nowadays I avoid the practice altogether, although it happens involuntarily still from time to time. What I experienced in this instance was different. It felt more physical, it felt more real, and I was attacked by God knows what. I wake up, laying flat on my bed, facing up, arms wide open and legs spread apart. The TV is on, the show Ink Master is running. It's night, but the room has a natural light to it, almost like a full moon. I see a shadow in the corner of the room. I try to get up but I can't move, I'm paralyzed. I start being able to move, but I feel heavy, like trying to swim underwater. The shadow gets closer to me, and then crawls on top of my body. This is embarrassing to say, and I normally leave this part out of the story. This thing proceeds to put its hands between my legs and press and squeeze, you know. I feel immense physical pain. There is actually something griping my body and really hurting me. I try to scream, but I can't. I start saying dash. The power of Christ compels you. Over and over, but it does nothing. My back starts to bend in an arch and am slightly levitating over my bed. Everything is happening very silently, which allows me to hear loud footsteps coming from the kitchen. While this is all happening, a man walks from the kitchen into my room. I can barely see or look, but he is a middle-aged man wearing a suit, looks very old-fashioned. After several attempts of asking, my words finally come out dash. Who are you? The man standing in the corner of my room states dash. My name is Lucifer. I then ask, concerned dash. Lucifer. He states dash. No, Lucifer. The painful back arching and floating continues for a while, when suddenly it stops. I fall on my bed, and it's suddenly daylight. Ink Master is still on and I can hear birds chirping. I never woke up from this. Like waking up from a dream, it simply stopped, and I was still awake. I spent the entire day looking things up online, trying to make sense of what happened. When it came night again, the same thing happens again. This entity, or whatever it is, grips me the same way and hurts me. You gotta understand the pain is very physical and excruciating. I can feel its hands and fingers, and this time I'm very pissed off. For one reason or another, this time I'm not afraid and I start trying to strangle it. I start asking it get me out of my body so I can murder it, and suddenly it all stops, just like that. After this second episode, it never happened again. From time to time, I am still attacked by an entity that looks like me, and am forced to fight it, but these are more like vivid nightmares, nothing like the situation I just described. I quit meditating, I quit trying to astral project, and this situation never happened again. I still involuntarily astral project in my sleep sometimes, but it's very uneventful. I don't see other entities or have bad or good things happen. I just float over a lake near my house and enjoy the view for the most part. Maybe there's more I could share, but I think I have shared enough. Thanks for getting this far. I never found out who Lucifer was. I tried. Odd experience in nature. My friend and I have had 2 odd experiences in the last month while smoking at night. I know you're thinking we are getting paranoid from getting too stoned, but the two of us are seasoned smokers and regularly dab. Just for context. Both times we were near water/marshland, sitting in the woods not very far from the water but also not close enough that it's in our line of sight. The first time we heard twigs snapping. This is very normal for us, however we both started to feel like we were being watched from a distance. At first we thought it might be a man who is a bit strange who likes to wander the area looking for junk and has had a conversation with the two of us once before. However, we saw the outline of ears. They were very similar to deer ears mixed with a cropped Doberman. My friend and I are both nature enthusiasts, and have had a lot of encounters with the local wildlife in our area, Marin County, including mountain lions and coyotes, and we are familiar with what they sound like walking around and stalking, but this was different. It appeared to be and sounded bipedal, however that does not make sense with the ears which were moving through the grass at around 5 to 6 feet tall. I was not sure what it was, but we could hear it circling and slowly moving closer. I still thought it was an animal at this point, so I stood up and turned my flashlight on and asked whatever it was to please leave. For about a minute it was dead quiet, so I called out again telling it to leave, but in a much sterner voice. It slowly started to back up as if it was walking backwards. It started to gain some distance, but we could still hear it was close and feel some kind of presence. While it was backing up, there was a quick small blue flash of light. We left as soon as we could gather our things, but felt very uneasy and tried to play it off, but we both decided we would never go back there unless it's daytime. The second occurrence was tonight. We had both taken one hit at this point when we heard something in the woods above us. We both figured it was just a deer, but it sounded much larger than the deer we normally encounter at night, and tried to brush it off as nothing, but it kept circling above us as we were sitting at the bottom of a hill. I would also like to add we were sitting on the edge of government-private property, as well as a government base. Once again it sounded like it was bipedal, or at least alternating between that and all fours. I have personally encountered bears before, however this again did not sound like a bear to me. Maybe it was, but I am unsure. Suddenly we start to hear loud noises that sound like something crunching through bone, significantly louder than breaking branches to me, as well as an odd clicking/chittering sound. There was somebody else nearby, but they were about 100 feet away, so I'm not sure if they could hear us or what was going on in the woods. The noises lasted about 30 to 45 seconds before going completely quiet again, then more branch snapping and another flash of blue light. Once again we felt very uneasy, like we were being stalked and watched by something from afar, so we packed up again and left quickly, almost running to the car. I'm not sure what it was, or if somebody is fucking with us, but both of us experienced extreme nausea on both occasions and threw up afterwards, which is uncommon for us, and felt like we were very out of it, and almost fuzzy. That feeling still hasn't completely gone away. These are things I have never experienced in my years of smoking, and have only had these experiences with one specific friend within a couple of miles of each other. Let me know your thoughts. I know it sounds a little silly, but we are both really weirded out, and don't feel comfortable going out to that part of town at night anymore. I also think it would be an odd delusion to share just because of the noises and the visuals. We buy all of our product from medical dispensaries, so I know it is not laced. I have smoked laced stuff before, very different from this. We also both do not have visual or auditory hallucinations and regularly meet with our psychiatrists and therapists, so I personally do not think it is psychosis. I'm 27 now, but I've had a few experiences scare me in the past. I'm kind of a skeptic, so I don't share this with people often. I grew up wealthy and privileged. My dad was famous in the 90s. He was a drug addict who went to rehab many times and was a very kind man who just had demons. Always hated that phrase, lol. He was on the news a lot for getting arrested for drug possession and things like that. I remember casually watching TV with my family and seeing him in a jumpsuit on the news. My mom tried to shield me and my sisters from all that, but we weren't dumb. I screamed and ran and locked myself in the bathroom after watching him look humiliated on TV. It was the first time I felt deep sadness. When I went to bed that night, I literally saw a darkness next to my bed. Best way to describe it is like a sharp as scribble standing next to me. I slept with my mom for months after. I was 7 at the time. Later, when I was 8 years old, he died from an overdose. Again, very public and in the papers and on the news. The shadow came back to my room, so I slept with my mom afterwards till I was 10. I would sleepwalk a lot and yell at my family and kick them. I don't remember any of it, but therapy called it a trauma response. Makes sense. Weird things happened for a while after. Like towels falling from the shower door plus closet light turning on randomly. There were valid explanations for those things, so I wasn't scared. Plus I was hoping it was my dad trying to let me know he'd finally found his peace. Fast forward to high school, my mom kept this solitaire game and my dad used to play in her drawer next to her bed. She hasn't touched it since years before he died. She wakes up one night because it starts vibrating, and the screen said, "You won," or something like that. It was 3 a.m. She freaked out and came to my room to wake me up. She's a huge skeptic, but that shook her up a lot. I saw the shadow again a month later. I convinced myself it was just a guardian or that I'm still grieving in a weird way. Then I started getting sleep paralysis quite a bit my last year of college. Never had paralysis before till then. I have a deaf French bulldog who sleeps with me. I wake up paralyzed and feel my dog running around my bed. I wasn't scared till I hear my dog snoring and realize he's sleeping beside me. I still felt something running around my bed, but it wasn't him. It happened a few times after, then stopped after a couple weeks. Note, I've been diagnosed with mild bipolar 1, and I've learned that when things get bad for me, it first starts as 1. Irrational guilt, 2. Extreme humiliation from intrusive thoughts from dumb shit I've said or done in the past, then 3. Fear and terror. Fear sucks. It's the worst feeling, and that's when I know I need to distract myself with art/hobbies or literally anything. Fast forward again to last summer in New Jersey. I was in my humiliation stage. This night scared the S*** out of me more than anything, and I'm gonna describe it as best I can. I was 26 and staying at a family friend's Victorian mansion built in like the 40s or something. Gothic style but renovated beautifully. I was laying in bed scrolling on my phone till I decided to turn the lamp off and try to fall asleep. The second I turned the lamp off, the yellowish street lights outside snuck in through the small gaps of the closed blinds and formed a face, looking sideways at me, head tilted and smiling big, but sinister. So I assume I'm nuts and turn my head to the other side facing the other window. I see it again. I felt like there was something in there trying to bully me into feeling fear again. I turn the lights on and start playing Mazzy Star to calm me down. Didn't realize how eerie her music is till then, lol. I eventually fall asleep and wake up with music still playing in the morning. I immediately get up and tell my sister that I think I'm developing, for lack of better words, schizophrenia or something else that's making me terrified of my own mind. I didn't think anything paranormal or demonic existed, as I am not religious and pretty skeptical. Then, one more time, last month something weird happened again. I was watching TV late at night. I turn the TV off to go to bed. Right when it shuts off, I see what looks like yellow eyes staring back at me. I ran to my roommate's room and slept with her for 2 days. Not sure if I'm crazy, but my psychiatrist and therapist think I'm fine. I've been too embarrassed to talk about it, but sometimes I worry that there's something out there that likes to bully me into getting into the fear stage of my illness. Once the fear stage hits, I just freeze up and fail at everything. It's been a month and I'm scared all the time, doing bad at my job, and constantly sick. Is my brain playing tricks on me, or is there something out there trying to mess with me? P.S. I think my dog sees it too, but Frenchies are bizarre, so it's hard to say. He's friendly to everyone, but sometimes he starts growling and snapping at nothing in my house. Sometimes I just think he's just nuts. But sometimes I feel bad energy as well when he goes into that mode. The place I used to live in was haunted. A little over a decade ago I had gotten married and we secured our apartment after my cousin moved out of state. She said that the place was good, and never mentioned anything else. The layout was pretty simple. It was a duplex with a very large living room, attached to the kitchen/dining room combination, with the back door at the kitchen. Where the living room met the kitchen, you can go right and there is a hallway that leads to the smaller back bedroom immediately to the left on the opposite wall of the kitchen, a small room for laundry and such, then the bathroom, followed by the bigger bedroom that was at the front of the house. When we first moved in, I had my PC at the front of the house, next to the window so I could see anyone coming to our home, know when the mail had arrived, etc. While there, I would always feel cold also with a feeling of being watched. It didn't matter how much clothing I wore, that cold feeling would not fade. I opted after a week of being there to move my PC to the other side of the room, next to the opening to the hallway, where I could see into the back room very easily. During this time, I could never sleep. I always felt like someone was there in the room, and this level of uncomfortability was unshakable. I started to feel extreme levels of paranoia and constantly feeling nauseous. I told my wife, now ex-wife but for easier typing I will continue to say wife, that I didn't like the back bedroom and that I wanted to move the bed to the front bedroom instead. She was confused why I felt that way, but I just explained myself, and she agreed because she was now on edge. Her reaction to me telling her this came off as odd. While streaming, now a retired streamer, Minecraft one night, my wife was visiting her family in Missouri but was watching, and for a moment I thought I had seen someone in the back bedroom. I froze completely because I was certain I saw a black silhouette. I collected myself, thought that being alone was getting to me and I was just seeing things, so I got up and closed the door, and then went back to my business. A few days later after that, while on the toilet I heard someone walking up and down the hallway. I froze in place again, but was frustrated and with a very authoritative voice said stop it, and the footsteps stopped. Once she was back, she had noticed that I was closing any door when I slept, and would oftentimes lock the door, like this was going to actually do anything, and I would only sleep during the day. My paranoia had gotten bad, but I knew something was wrong. One night after I cooked and we did the dishes together, we were watching a movie and then heard the dishes moving around at times. Out of fear of bugs, or rats, even though this wasn't a bad place to live, I just figured I didn't sit the dishes up properly, and they fell over. This started to become a regular thing, even when dishes weren't out. So now, feeling this level of paranoia that the place is haunted, I tell my wife directly that when the lease is up, we are out. She then tells me that it may continue even if we move places. She then tells me that her stepdad was treated poorly by her mom, and he was like a real dad to her. To spare the full details, he would sleep under the porch because she wouldn't let him in the house, and my wife's connection with him was strong. He ultimately passed away, and she did something that blew my mind. She had experimented with things before we were together to try and get him to speak to me. I don't know everything that she did, but I know it involved the pentagram on the ground and other things. So now I am in this state of mind where, is it him? Does he not like me? Did she summon some sort of demon and not him? She never told me this during our dating phase, and apparently she never was going to tell me until this happened. Stupefied was an understatement. We continue to live there and I try my best to deal with it while counting the days down to move out. I had eventually become so used to things that I just didn't pay too much attention to it anymore, and people would make jokes about our ghost roommate. Even on the day where we moved out, my cousin was helping us and she said, "Say bye to the ghost." And while I was not there for this moment, they, cousin and wife, both swear they saw 2 dishes move. Here is the part that I skipped on purpose, because it's just best you see the proof that I am not lying. My paranoia got so bad that I started researching where we lived. After we moved out, I finally found out the landlord's husband died there a decade and some change before we lived there.